Alright, so hey everyone, today I want to take a look at Balan Wonderworld's Deadzones. This game has had quite a bit of criticism leveled at it over its kind of general game design, its controls, and its graphics and performance, and I'm just going to add on to that criticism with the Deadzones. So jumping straight into it, the movement uses a large rounded kind of rounded square dead zone, and it's a little interesting because normally rounded square dead zones have the rounded corners start once they pass over the restricted diagonal movement range, and this happens a little before then. That's kind of unique in that way. Of course, the blue regions represent these restricted diagonal movement ranges. So in these cases, I'm moving perfectly forward and back. You can see diagonal movement starts pretty abruptly once I pass this threshold, and it's a little less noticeable the further you go out. And while you're making diagonal movements, it's pretty gradual until it locks you into the next restricted diagonal movement region. It's a little difficult to show with the camera around, but you can see that the kind of obvious pivot is still applied horizontally. The camera uses a very tall rectangle dead zone, and you can see that there is a huge amount of restricted diagonal movement. So basically, you can move just left and right perfectly horizontally. And I want to show kind of this is the kind of minimum speed you can access horizontally. You'll notice that once you pass the vertical dead zone, the vertical sensitivity is quite a bit higher. You notice that when looking up into the character, it goes into a kind of first-person mode. This actually has its own dead zone, and it's a standard square with this expected amount of restricted diagonal movement. So you can see perfectly left, perfectly up, and once you break in out of these restricted diagonal movement ranges, you'll see diagonal movement occur. And when you move, you break into kind of the normal camera again. Now, for both movement and the camera, these should be circles. There's really no reason not to have this. Having restricted diagonal movement just makes camera movement and movement feel clunkier than it needs to be. And specifically for the camera, there's no reason to have two separate dead zones for camera movement and first-person movement. It could just be a simple circle with no restricted diagonal movement, and that would feel fine for the game. It's also weird that you have to look up into the character to enter this mode, considering that basically every button is just repeated, and the D-pad is completely unbound. They could have just had a direct bind for this. And I mean, even the menus, you can't use the B button to back out of. That's another complaint. Yeah, so the camera could just be, a normal circular dead zone. Even if you didn't want to have a bind to go in first person, even if you just looked up into the character like this, there's no reason to have separate dead zones for each. Lastly, there's one other dead zone found in this game, and that's for the soccer minigame. That uses for both the for the camera and the aiming cursor. That uses a rounded square dead zone. Not quite like this movement dead zone. A little more predictable, and I'll show that on screen. But otherwise, that's about it. hopefully a lot of the issues that other players have brought up about this game can get fixed by the time it launches. But this would be another improvement that the game could make to help the controls feel a little smoother than they are. Thanks for watching, and everyone, have a good rest of your day.